Welcome one, welcome all to DeFi Crypto and Airdrops. I am Veteran Crypto. Sorry, I'm in my workout gear. I just like to work out when I'm listening to Discover Crypto and BitLab Academy and Blockchain Basement. So get a couple reps in while you listen. But just gonna do a quick 30 minutes today, 30 45 minutes, and show you all kind of how I find my uh, the liquidity pools that are gonna pay the best, that have the best volume, have the best TVL, things like that. All those data points that give you the best rewards. So first off, out the gate, if you could, give us a follow on YouTube at DeFi Crypto Airdrop. We actually had a great episode last night with Lucas. If you haven't followed him, I would highly suggest you find him on YouTube. He is with haven't drawn a blank. CryptoLabs Research. Um, so they are where I started my DeFi journey, and they have a lot of really good information when it comes to a lot of the stuff that I talk about. How to find pools, how to use a lot of the tools like DeFi Llama, VFAT, DeFi aggregators, things like that. I learned a lot of it, through them, and then of course dip my toe in and learn from a little bit of trial and error as well. But I was able to mitigate a lot of my losses, learning from them. So I highly suggest you go check them out. Um, this is our ex, my ex veteran number 4 crypto. And I want you to pay special attention to this pinned post that I have up here. And it's the DeFi rules. So I'm going to use this as segue into how I pick my pools. So the first rule in choosing a liquidity pool is believe in the assets. I always make sure that whatever assets are in the pool. So if it's like a BTC USDC pool or a Plume USDC or anything, I always make sure that it is a that I wouldn't mind hodling that asset. So if I have to round trip that asset, like right now, I'll show you here in a second. I have an ETH USDC pool that when ETH went from around 4,000 down to under 2,000, it went out the bottom of my range. And so basically right now I'm hodling ETH, waiting for the price to go back up and for that to go back into range so I can start earning. I haven't locked in those losses because I'm still holding that asset and waiting for it to go back up. So always pick assets you believe in. Second, you want at least $250,000 worth of total value locked or TVL. Reason being is slippage. If there's low TVL, when you're entering and exiting, and the more that you're depositing or withdrawing, it makes it worse. Um, you have to allow for higher slippage, which means that you're going to lose some of your money to get in and out of that pool. So the higher the TVL, the better. Second is volume. Um, I look for a 24-hour volume that's equal to or greater than the TVL. Next, a trusted DEX, like Aerodrome, Uniswap, Aave, Morpho, um, you know, platforms that are backed by big money and big investments, Coinbase, things like that. To me, if they have insurance, that's even better. Um, high correlation. I'm not going to get into correlation right now. I'll get into it here in a bit. It's very important. Basically, all that means is the two assets move up and down together. So I'm a big fan of things like USDC with another asset. So like USDC with Plume, USDC with ETH. It's easier for me to wrap my head around how those assets are going to move because stable coin's not going to move. The other asset's going to move. So it's when the assets are moving independently, if one's pumping and one's dumping, you're going to get out of range and you're going to get divergence loss. So I'll get into that. And then, of course, gas fees. ETH mainnet has been a lot better than it has been in the past. However, you're still paying higher gas fees on ETH mainnet as opposed to using base, where it's fractions of a cent. I'm a huge fan. Anybody that's listened to me knows I'm a huge fan of base. So that's where I do most of mine. The only reason my plume pools are on ETH mainnet is that's the only place I was able to find them. So those are the rules. Feel free to copy this, make it your screensaver, whatever you got to do. But this is the foundation of how I pick my pool. Let me go through the chat real quick and give some shout outs. Granny, appreciate you. Alexandra G, I really appreciate you in the chat. Actually, let me make sure that Alexandra G, let's see. Yeah, okay. You're a mod. I appreciate you, helping me with the chat. Let's see. We got Noob Dude, we got Uncle Tommy, Creston, Lasers Go Pew Pew, Big Hands Dan. I appreciate Wispy. I appreciate all of you. So let's jump right into it. So the first tool that I'm going to show you is DeFi Lump. So the important thing to understand about DeFi liquidity pools and just DeFi in general is you are earning fees based off volume. People swapping, people taking out loans, whatever that is, it's directly proportional to volume and TVL. So you want to get actual data, of what is going on with volumes and with TVL. And the best place that you're going to find it that I've found so far is DeFi Llama. So as you can see on DeFi Llama, DeFi Llama, you can come here and you can just go to overview, and they have this. It's somewhat new. This really cool dashboard. And so you can look at the total value locked in, all of DeFi. You can look in up here. You have the toggles. You can look at TVL and Dex volume, across all the different Dexes, and you can see, like if back here, you saw that, that volumes and TVL was pumping. This was when I was making huge money. This was my first month in DeFi. I made 5 grand off of 12 grand during this pump. So now is the time, in when we're down in these lows, um, to start building out your DeFi portfolio, so that when the pump comes, you get price appreciation plus all the assets, all the yield that you stacked. In the sideways market and in the down market, all of those assets pump as well. And if those are in your wallet and not in a pool, you get full price appreciation. So you're adding to your hodl bag, and you can add to your DeFi positions as well. So, that it's good to know, where the liquidity is moving to, because, as you can see down here, you start getting into like RWA, TVL, that's starting to pump. Crypto market cap is starting to pump. Stable coins, they're starting to mint stable coins, which usually is a precursor to upward movement in the markets. Down here, protocol rankings, Aave, has massive, massive TVL. I have it set to volume. Aave has huge volumes. Lido is a good one. And then you start getting down here, and then of course you get Uniswap and Aerodrome, and a lot of those platforms. So don't hunt, APRs. APRs are smoke and mirrors. It can be 2,000% 1 second, and it can be 1% the next second. Look for where the liquidity is. Look for where people are swapping. That's what you want, because that's where you're going to earn fees. If there's a super high APR but there's no volume, you're not going to earn anything. It doesn't matter what the APR is. It matters what the volume is. So like me personally, if I'm making 30%, if I'm making 100%, if I'm making 10%, I don't care as long as I'm making consistent fees. And we'll get into that as well. So, as you can see here, by volume right now, Aerodrome is actually beating Uniswap. 24-hour spot volume, $337 million on Aerodrome, whereas on Uniswap, it's only 185 million. So, you can see that, Aerodrome, and that's why, I'm constantly shilling Aerodrome, is no matter what the price does, everything else about Aerodrome is bullish. they have the most volume on BTC and ETH liquidity pools consistently. There's a ton of volume on Aerodrome, and that's been my best earner, and that's why I have my my lock and stuff like that because my lock, my VE Arrow, is what is what's actually earning the most for me because it compounds weekly. But I'm getting paid based off of the fees that are generated on the whole platform of Aerodrome because I'm a VE Arrow holder. Um, so yeah, I mean it's Aerodrome. I can't talk enough about it. It's a really great platform to provide liquidity on, and you can use a DeFi aggregator like VFAT, and I'll show you that here in a second too. To to put liquidity on Aerodrome, Uniswap, PancakeSwap, most of the major exchanges. So this again, another great tool to see where the volume, or the fees, like I can click over here and it will show me, yeah, right here, fees, 24 hours. Um, let's sort that. Uniswap actually is beating out Aerodrome in fees. They are generating $500,000 dollars worth of fees in the past 24 hours, whereas Aerodrome is only 234,000. So again, I always go off data, not emotion. So let's see if there's any. All right, no questions yet. So I hope everybody's understanding. So next tool is Bridge TVL. So this is a good way to find out if, like, say, like for a minute there before the markets tanked, Sonic, the Sonic chain, a lot of liquidity started moving to Silo and DeFi, in on Sonic there for a second. And if you were watching this, if you were watching the Bridge TVL, you would have gotten a head start on that and you could have taken advantage of that. So what this is when you're bridging liquidity, like say that you want to enter a plume pool on Uniswap. You have to have, obviously Plume is on ETH mainnet. You have to have E or USDC on ETH mainnet, not USDC on base chain. So if I have USDC on base chain, I'll need to bridge that to USDC on ETH mainnet. And so that's what this registers is if I go to Uniswap and I swap my USDC on base for USDC on ETH, this is going to pick that up. So if everybody's moving liquidity from base to ETH, this is what's going to tell you that. And that's going to give you a precursor if you're about to open a pool of, hey, I might want to look at, say, Uniswap or something that has to do with that has ETH mainnet on it. Or if all of a sudden you see Tron, like right now, Tron is second in total bridged. You might want to start looking at some DeFi plays over on Tron, which I'll be honest, I haven't really looked much at it, but after this stream, I'm probably going to. So, oh yeah, Uncle Tommy, I'm glad that you were able to get in on getting a lock because yeah, it's I'm printing printing arrow on that one. It's I've made I deposited 5,100, and with the flight school bonus and the earnings, I've doubled my arrow in the past 4 months, and just in my lock. And if it keeps earning like it is, when it unlocks in 4 years, I'll have about 75,000 arrow. And so I'm hoping that arrows at $10 in 4 years because I'll have 750 grand. Um. All right. Next. So I hope this is landing with all of you. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. This is the data that I look at again, just before I even go to Uniswap, Aerodrome, PancakeSwap, or anything to deposit liquidity. These are all the things that I'm looking at to make sure that I'm putting my liquidity in the right place to where it's going to earn the most. So this one here is pools. So you can come here and look at, instead of going to each individual platform, you can come here and you can sort. So like say that you have a bunch of wrapped Bitcoin. I can select that and it will show me, where I can go and use that wrapped Bitcoin. If you want to use Coinbase wrapped Bitcoin, you can do that. If you're looking for a stable coin pool, you can do that. This allows you to check that. If you want to do it on a specific chain, like you don't want to bridge your liquidity over to another chain, you want to keep it on Base or you want to keep it on Tron. You can sort, using that criteria there. You can look at projects if you like a certain platform, category if you're looking for just lending, if you're looking for liquid staking, liquid restaking, RWAs. The possibilities are endless. You can put in the max or minimum APY. If I only want up to 200% APY, or I don't want any less than 10%, earning, then I can apply that filter and it shows me, all of the ones that are between 10% and 200%. So this is a great way to just narrow down very quickly. Once you go and look at these other data, you look at this other data, and you see if the liquidity is on Base, and you can come here, and I can just clear all and select only Base if that's where the liquidity is going. I can pick, the APYs I want. I can look at the TVL range. So I'll just say, like my usual is I only want 200, a minimum of 250K in TVL. I can apply that filter and say that I'm just looking for, let's look at yield and Dexes. Let's actually just do Dexes. So yeah, and this basically using only that criteria will show me the places that I can go and that have 250 k to no maximum of TVL, an APY, and I wish that it had volume. Let's see. Let's actually there we go. 1 day volume. Let's add that. All right. So yeah, 1 day volume. So let's say I want to sort that. So this Sol USDC on Orca is earning 60%. It has 32 million in TVL and a base APY of 60% and a 1 day volume of $230 million. That is would be a juicy one to look at. Not saying go do it, but that might be a juicy one to look at. Really great TVL, really great volume, and a really good APY, a very reasonable, sustainable APY. It's not, 10,000% or anything like that, but those usually don't pan out. I'll just be honest with you. I don't like super high APRs. Wrapped ETH USDC is earning 75% on Arbitrum right now, Arbitrum chain on Uniswap version 3. Uh, really good TVL, really good daily volume. So again, this is a great tool to use. All right. So I'm going to share this is the Plume USDC pairs that I'm always talking about. These are all I'm testing out uh some different variations to help you all. Like I said, I'm on my learning journey, and so I'm trying to help you all or make mistakes so that you all don't have to. So you can go to places like CryptoLabs Research and get the 10-pound brains that have been doing this forever and they're making millions. I'm the guy that is making myself the guinea pig. I'm learning from them and trying to implement what I've learned, and I'm sharing my successes and my failures. So right now, I'm testing out V3, the difference between V3 and V4 on Uniswap, to see which one earns better. And so far, it's weird, but I'm finding that V4 earns more consistently. However, there is more TVL and volume on V3. And the reason that V4 seems to be earning a little bit better is that it has a lot of automated yield optimization. I won't get into the nuts and bolts of it. And there's a thing called hooks, which I haven't got into yet, but it allows developers to come up with functionality that when you open the pool, that you can add to it, that to where you can customize your liquidity pool. So as I learn that, I'll do some videos on it, but I haven't delved that deep into it yet. But this one I just opened up a couple of days ago. I'm earning about $5 to $10 a day on about $1,300. So great earning. It doesn't seem like a lot, but if you look at it from a like monthly, $5 a day monthly, you're looking at what? 10, 5, 50, $150 roughly. I'm making $150 off of $1,300. So that's over 10% per month. And that's in a flat market. We're at the bottom. There's like hardly any volume right now. Nobody is, excited about the markets. We're, in the depths of, FUD, and I'm still earning like that. So when the markets start pumping and the volume comes in, I might be, earning 50% or 40% off of these positions. And all the while, through this sideways market, I've just been stacking more Plume and more USDC because on Uniswap, that's how I'm paid out is whatever the pairs are. Like in this case, Plume and USDC, that's what I'm earning. So, yeah, I'm going to speed this up a little bit. I don't want to keep you guys all day, but but yeah, I mean that's what you got to keep in mind is you're not going to get rich quick using DeFi. But if you build out, if you take your time, if you have the discipline and you build out your DeFi portfolio, it can be life changing. Yeah, you're not going to get $1 million overnight, but you can get to where you're earning, a couple of extra $100 a month, and then a couple $1,000 a month, and then $10,000 a month, and then $20,000 a month. If you keep the discipline and you keep compounding the yield that you're earning back into your portfolio, and live well within your means, you can build your DeFi portfolio to pay you out residual income each month. It might start out to where it buys your groceries, and then it pays for your car, and then it pays for your mortgage, and then and just and it keeps building. That is what you need to figure out is what are your goals. And for me, I want to get to where I am making, my first goal is to make $5,000 a month, and I'm well on my way. And with minimal amount of money. Like I said, I only started with like 12 to $15,000, and I've more than doubled that since starting DeFi 4 months ago through discipline. I didn't freak out when the markets dumped. I didn't close all my positions. Like I said, here's my ETH position. I'll show it to you. This ETH position right here. It is out of range. It's out of range bad. It's down here at 1,700 is where the price of ETH is. I needed to get back up to 2,400 before it's back in range and can start earning. But I'm not worried about it. I got my Plume positions. I got my Arrow positions. I got my locks on Arrow. I got this Shadow USDC and a bunch of other back. So um, yeah, I'm not gonna touch on these. I will touch on this real quick because tomorrow I'm going to have Kelly on. If I'm hoping to have Kelly on, but I want to loop in technical analysis and how. Oh, there we go. We're back. I want to loop in technical analysis and how it plays into picking a pool. So when you're picking a range, like if you're doing lending, this doesn't apply. If you're doing a full range position, like on here. Um, you can see right here it has full range. This one, it doesn't matter what the price of Plume does. If it's 0, I'm still earning. If it pumps to $1,000, I'm still earning. These are ranged positions. You can see that there's a range here. So where is that? Here we go. So when you're picking ranges, you're going to use some very basic technical analysis. You're going to look for these sections where this pool, because I mean I looked up the address, and pick this USDC wrapped ETH on Aerodrome, and you can see you have these sections where it was ranging. And so what you can do, I'll zoom in a little bit, is you can basically pick your ranges when you're opening these pools, and you can make it to where it's a narrow range where you're going to earn higher APR. But if it goes out of range, like you can see where it pokes out here and it pokes out here, you're not earning yield when it's out of range. If you pick a wider range, you're going to earn less APR, but you're going to stay in range longer. So, if there's a moment of volatility, you're going to keep earning. And me personally, I like just steady earning. I'm not trying to maximize. I would rather have it earning something than nothing. Especially on very volatile assets. If you start doing stuff like ETH and dog with hat, and you're going to get a lot of volatility, opposing volatility in that, and it's going to be going out of range a lot. So you don't want to set narrow ranges on highly volatile assets or highly volatile pairs. So we'll talk a little bit about this tomorrow if I can get Kelly on. I'm not going to talk about the markets or news. You guys, Discover Crypto and Blockchain Basement does a great job of that. And Kelly. Let's see. Here's my here's a tracker that I've started using. Um, and I can make this available to all of you. If you'd like, maybe I'll end up throwing it in the new Discord. But this is what I started using to track my pools. So it's a lot of automation, a lot of formulas and stuff like that that's built into it. I'm borrowing this from CryptoLabs Research. I've done a lot of modifications to it, but the original document, that's where it came from. And but yeah, I mean, all of it feeds into this dashboard, and so it tells me what I am earning. So right now on the ones that I'm tracking on here, I haven't finished filling this out. My DeFi portfolio right now is about $14,000. And again, this is automated. So as the price of assets are moving up and down, this is updating live. So this is showing me, with what I have put in here right so far, $5,000 a year worth of DeFi income I'm making just off of 13,000. And again, in a flat market, my monthly income is just over 400, $400 a month. And my daily DeFi income for, again, what I've so far plugged into this is about $14 a day. Doesn't seem like a lot, but again, I mean, that 5 grand a year. I mean, it's free money. I'm making $5,000 just off of this, little bit that I got plugged in so far. I haven't put all my, liquidity pools in here, but just on what I plugged in so far. I mean, I'm making what? That's roughly 30, actually around 40% roughly that I'm making APR off of, DeFi. I mean, that is huge compared to traditional markets. If you're making 10% in a traditional market, that's considered great. I'm making 40, and I'm new to this. There's those of you out there that I'm sure a lot smarter than me can probably dial yours in much better than than I'm doing. And again, once I plug in the rest of my pools, I'll be doing much better than this. But if you can make, off of 13 grand, and this is just a portion of my HODL portfolio, if you can make an extra, $5,000 a year, to invest. Just what I have in here, I'm going to have, what, $130,000, just in my DeFi portfolio. If I will 10x as well. So I'll have $50,000 that I'm earning per year. Monthly will be $4,130. I hope that this is landing with you to where you understand, how powerful DeFi can be, not just in what you're earning. Okay, we're back. Not just in what you're earning right now, but if you have the vision to see what these assets can do as the markets pump. And then, of course, which leads me to where I'm going to close. This this is my bull run bag and ladder out strategy. Again, something that I borrowed from CryptoLabs Research, and did a bunch of modifications to it. But I put all of my assets, my Casper, my DAG, my Arrow, my Ondo, my Plume, my Link, and it shows me my portfolio and how it's all split. My total portfolio is split. What percentage? I'm a little bit heavy in Casper. I'm waiting for it to pump a little bit. I'm going to sell some off because, as you can see over here, I have my ladder out strategy. I'm going to sell 10%. If Casper hits 10 cents, I'm going to sell 70,000 because I typed in 10%. So it automatically did a lot of these calculations. So I'm going to sell 70,300 tokens, and which will be about 7 grand, at 10 cents. And I'm going to diversify that. I'm going to move it into a liquidity pool so I can start earning with that. And then my liquidity pools, I all of as the markets pump, I'm going to start taking that yield out and cashing it out in USDC or USDT and stables. Lock in those profits. And as I'm locking in those profits, I'm going to take that USDC and USDT, and I'll probably be putting it somewhere that I feel is safe, like portion of it on Aave, maybe even some of it on Coinbase, earn 5% there on Aave, maybe earn 10, 20, 30% on my USDC there. Maybe it's Morpho, maybe it's Moonwell, anywhere I can earn yield on it, and but still have that locked in and wait. As I'm laddering out, again, I'm just going to keep plussing up that those bags of stables, and then when the market crashes, I'm locked in. As you can see, my ladder out total, if I hit all my projections, I'm going to have $656,000. Will be what my portfolio is, and I've been very, very conservative in my price, in my prices. Again, I'm looking for a 10x on Casper. On DAG, I'm looking at a little bit more because I see DAG as being very undervalued. Arrow, my first take profit is basically at our recent all time high, about $2.30, $2.50. But and I might adjust these a little bit, but my goal is to make about $500,000 on this bull run. If I see my assets get to 500,000, I'll probably be all out. I'll be all out into stables, maybe on some higher conviction plays like DAG. Arrow, I have the locks, so I'm not worried about having a long term bag of that. I already do. Ondo, Plume, Link, Avax. I'll probably keep a small forever bag of maybe 10%, but for the most part, I'm going to be all out. And it's so important that you build out a ladder out, your plan, your strategy now before the markets pump, because you're gonna get the emotion. You're gonna keep thinking that the markets are gonna keep pumping and that you're just gonna keep making more and more and more and more money. Um, and you're not gonna time the top. Nobody nobody times the top. Um, so make sure you're taking profits. Make sure that you have a plan and stick to your plan. All right. So I'll close with that. Let me see if there's any questions. Let's see. Awesome. I love that. Nice. Can a pool dry out? Yes. Tinkerbell. Um, if the volume, like say that there's a liquidity pair, like say it's something I'm trying to think of a flash in the pan crypto, like Sheep. When Sheep was pumping, if there was a liquidity pool for Sheep USDC, you would definitely, when all that, social media was going on, stuff like that, and everybody was swapping and, swapping to get Sheeb and stuff like that. They were probably people that, would have been providing to a pool like that would have made a lot of money. Once that, feverish, FOMO, subsided and those volumes go away, then yeah, you're not getting those swaps, and so you're not going to be earning as much. That's why it's so important that you use the tools that I showed you at the beginning of the stream to see where the volume is, to see where the TVL is, so you know how to maneuver yourself through the markets. And don't chase. If you have good pools open that are earning for you, with good assets, don't worry about it. If they're earning for you, don't sweat it. But if you're deploying new liquidity, look for where the volume is and look for where the TVL is. Hope that answers your question. Um, oh, difficult to see the screen. Is it the size or is it the resolution? Let me know. Where can I find that spreadsheet? Sufficient enough. I'll see if there's a way to share it. Once the new Discord goes live, we have a section in there. It's going to be one that just has Discover Crypto, Blockchain Basement, BitLab Academy, and myself. We'll all be in there. You'll be able to interact, with all of the communities in one place. And I'm going to have an academy, a DeFi academy. I'm actually building a course right now, so people can learn, the basics of DeFi, and it'll be for free. And maybe I'll once I'm done tuning these spreadsheets up, I'll stick these in there as well. But with that, I don't want to string this out too long. I appreciate you all. Have you all tried using AI to assist? I do a little bit, boosted. Um, I'll ask basic questions in AI, but AI AI isn't, in my opinion, there yet to get solid defined data. I use it, but to ask where to put my liquidity, I don't. But I appreciate you all. I hope you're all making money. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll never ask you to send me money. I'll never ask you to to connect your wallet or anything crazy like that. If anybody is claiming to be me and doing that, that's not me. But I am more than happy to answer questions, in the Discord, once that's open, or if you want to reach out to me on X, more than happy to answer questions. But until then, Veteran Crypto out.